a traditional residential sale to what we would call a wholesale deal is if there's an assignment in it. I mean, honestly, I
Yep.
get the question and I understand we've
Yep.
taken this bucket and we've said if it's a double close, if it's an A to B, B to C, meaning two
Hmm.
contracts, or if there's an assignment, a to B with an assignment, or there's a JV, a joint venture.
To do better in their business, but I also have to.
I don't know how to do it.
That kind of brings me to like, what is the process for title? Okay, so tell me if you could run me through the for say a homeowner selling their property, what's the from beginning to end? What's the process look like?
Okay, so from a title perspective, the first thing someone should do, whether it's that homeowner or if they're represented by a realtor or an attorney, we always encourage that you order pre-title.
Okay.
So whether you have a contract or not, if you know that you're in the process of selling this property and you have a relationship with your preferred title company, we encourage that you open up escrow. I'll use that term for our audience.
Yep.
We call it pre-title. Some of our out-of-staters call it open escrow.
Right.
What that is a trigger to us title folks to say, hey, I need an informational search done on 123 ABC Street. That
Hmm.
informational search would consist of that email or however coming to us. There's a backroom team that you'll never meet. That team
Hmm.
is the team that goes and pull all documents, recorded documents that's
Right.
related to this ABC or this 123 ABC Street. All
Now,
recorded documents.
real quick, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
Mhm.
but is it like is there a place where you go like a central system that you type in the address and it comes up with everything related to this, or is it like a Google search, or is it a mixture of everything?
No Google. Everything that we do is done through records from the Wayne County, Oakland County, or various register of deeds.
Got it. Okay.
So for any of your larger counties, it's they we're now electronic. Back in the day,
Yeah.
back in the day when I first got into this, and that's funny, I'm saying back in the day. Wow. We had an actual facility that we used to go to
Mm.
pull documents. Folks worked there, and we would go and pick up docs and all that good stuff, or we would have to go down to the various counties. Where now almost all counties, except for some of the smaller ones up by the thumb area, are everything is indexed online.
Hmm.
So we pull the same data that you would pull if you went to the county's kiosk machine. The only
Hmm.
difference is there's search products that guarantee us information. So we're pulling what you're pulling, but we're working with these different companies, a name, data trace, and things like that, that have over the years consolidated with these various counties, and they have this information easier accessible to us. So we're
Okay.
not going down to the county. The only time we would have to go to the county, and sometimes we have to order documents, is if we're doing commercial, because with
Hmm.
commercial, we go back 100 years. And some
Right.
of that stuff is still on that very thin microfiche type paper, believe it or
Right.
not. So
Yeah.
that those things can't be scanned. It's big what we do. A lot of folks don't get it. But we use these different search engines that
Hmm.
guarantee us that the information we're getting is accurate and is correct and is not what we call indexed incorrectly, things like that. Now,
Hmm.
mind you, these are humans that are putting this information in there over time. So humans make mistakes.
Yep.
But this is where we pull all our data from. So the first key is pulling all the data related to that 123 ABC Street. Anything,
Hmm.
anything that's related to that street over a 40-year span. If we're doing a residential, if we're doing commercial of something large, then we may go
Hmm.
back 100 years, depending on how large that land is. Okay.
Okay.
So with that, we're looking at all of these documents to see what still applies and what no longer applies. to create an actual informational search. So everything that we
Hmm.
pulled, it may not apply. There may have been some old mortgages that have been discharged. There may have been some certificate of forfeitures that are no longer applicable, because taxes
Hmm.
have been paid. There may have been erroneous documents because, again, people make mistakes. It should have been lot 47. They put lot 74, but
Hmm.
those things may have been resolved along the way. So the goal is to come up with, establish a good starting point of ownership. And we'll just use residential of 40 years, good ownership going forward. So I always call it connecting the dots. At that point
Okay.
that we establish ownership, now we're connecting the dots. We know who the owner is. Did that owner have any
Yep.
current mortgages that have not been discharged? We don't know if they're paid off or not. If it's a mortgage recorded and we don't see a discharge, that's an informational item that goes on the search. We also
Got
look
it.
for, your standard things such as taxes. Again, we don't go to
Hmm.
Google. There's sites for all of that stuff. Wayne County, Oakland
Okay.
County Treasurer, things like that. The only time we'll use Google is if we need to pin in and look at a legal description and it has additional information that leads us to believe that there should be a lot included with that house and the buyer and the
Okay.
sellers didn't know that. But then we also spin off and we use other engines for checking bankruptcies, tax
Okay.
lien, because you don't get this information. And that's what people say, well, there's nothing recorded against my name. You're absolutely not. It's not recorded against your name from Wayne or Oakland or Macomb. There's another search engine that you wouldn't even know about because you don't do what we do. And that
Right.
engine lets us know if there's someone, an assumed name, an associated name, the same name. Mary Jane is a common name.
Hmm.
Randy Smith is a common name. John Williams is a common name. So when you run that name, anyone with liens with that name pops
Yeah.
up. So that's when
Right.
you see that requirement, you need a social. But then we go even further and we look for the Patriotic Act because some folks
Okay.
they can't buy or sell for whatever the reasons are with crossing the lines. We look for
Hmm.
stuff with the DOJ. It's so all of this is what these backroom folks do, and they examine
Okay.
all of these documents and then they type the product, and that's what we deliver to you. The end result product is, hey, here's an informational report. Here's still what's outstanding. This
Okay.
person owns it. This person has two mortgages. This person has unpaid taxes. We need this person's social security number because it's a common name. They may have bankruptcies. Oops, by the way, we found a deed that does not belong, but because it's recorded against our property, we cannot ignore it. We got to
Right.
put it in there. So
Right.
that's what creates the beginning conversation of an informational title search. And then as we go along, we discuss with whomever our point person is, the realtor, whomever, seller, attorney. Here's what we
Hmm.
need to clear up these items. This is our seller, great, but he or she has two open mortgages. Most of the time, you get the argument, my seller only has one mortgage. Okay, well, the other one isn't released. We need a release. So now you
Right.
got to go through the channels of working with them to get the proper release. Or why do you need my seller's social? Because if they have judgments and liens against them, or a divorce, because we do check the Wayne County Circuit Court for divorces, a different
Yep.
site. If there's a divorce, we got to see, can they sell the property? Do they have to make certain payments to the spouse?
Right.
So we go through clearing up, chopping down all those different requirements that you see on the commitment to get to
Hmm.
saying, okay, now we have a payoff if we need it. Now we know what the taxes are. We've reviewed the divorce. We verified that you don't have any liens because you gave us the last four. You bring your card to closing. Because, believe it or
Hmm.
not, we've had some folks give us the wrong last four. And then when we say you got to bring the card to closing, everything changes. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they
Yep.
didn't expect
Yep.
us to ask for the physical card. So as we're progressing along, we're chopping down what we need in order to say, okay, now we're ready to get you to the closing
Yeah.
table. So
Got
that's
it.
kind of that, getting from the starting point to saying we have clear title and rolling into an actual closing.
So it kind of sounds like the thing is that somebody can do this on their own as far as doing the research, but it's really there nothing. It's only going to be an informational base, and that's really about it. Even if you go to the extensive that you guys do, I'm not saying that somebody on their own would. But say they do, obviously, just in case if something else pops up, they're still not insured. They're not, nothing's going through there. So the good thing that going through a title company is, okay, you've gone through all this research. Now you can put a policy in involved and said, hey, if we screwed up, we're taking care of you.
We're
Is
taking
that right?
care of you for to a certain extent. Now you're
Oh,
right. And
when it comes to the deed or the title, that's what I refer to. So, like, say something comes up to cloud the title or something like that. So that's what I was referring to.
yeah, if we
So
miss something. Now
yes.
someone can do it on their own. The only thing with that is um things that you got to look for outside of what I described. Is just say for
Hmm.
instance you and I took title together and that's a recorded deed.
Yep.
But once there's a second deed out there, so you found a deed, you and I owned property
Hmm.
together, you deeded out to someone else. Someone went down to the kiosk and they pulled that deed and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, Randy deeded out, and it keeps going. They got to have that eye to say, well, Emma and Randy own that title together. Why didn't
Yeah.
Emma deed out? You
Right.
see, so there, and
Yep.
again, I'm not saying, because I have my junior examiners and I love you
Yep.
guys. I do. But
Yep.
it's just certain things that you just wouldn't know
Hmm.
to look for. But if you
Right.
did, the ultimate goal is making sure that what I pointed out is surfaced, and documents are provided to clear those things up or what have you to turn that into a policy.
Most definitely. And I will say this is that every deal that I've done, every wholesale deal that I've done, whether it be with you or another title company, okay, I've learned something new, that something different pops up and we got to figure it out. We got to take care of it. We got to get some sort of document, or this is out of date. So we got to go redo probate, you
Hmm.
know. That happened to me with actually with you guys. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, the documents he had was expired and he had to
Yep.
redo probate. It lasted 6 more months, but we got it sold. We got it taken care of.
Yep.
It was a learning in the process. Johnny Stewart over here said he's an escrow guy here. So that's awesome. So, one thing I wanted to ask is because my channel is more towards investors and wholesalers, is what does a wholesaler or an investor, like, we're always looking for investor and wholesaler friendly title companies. Okay. So now if somebody was like, well, how do you know whether it's a investor friendly title company? I go, well, you ask them certain questions. So I know the questions I would ask, but I want to leave that asking, what questions do you want to hear from, say, investors and wholesalers, to know that you are an investor and wholesale friendly title company?
Well, I get that, they call with that script,
Yep.
with the only thing for me that takes the transaction from being a traditional residential sale to what we would call a wholesale deal is if there's an assignment in it. I mean, honestly, I
Yep.
get the question and I understand we've
Yep.
taken this bucket and we've said if it's a double close, if it's an A to B, B to C, meaning two
Mm-hmm.
contracts, or if there's an assignment, a to B with an assignment, or there's a JV, a joint venture, or if I'm doing transactional funding, all that is dumped into a bucket and now you're considered an investor friendly title company.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, or I'm an investor that I go out and I purchase the sheriff's deed at the auction. And because I'm an investor and I do this, I'm looking for an investor friendly title company. So I
Right.
get it. And I understand that those are the things that are dumped into the investor friendly title company, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in the blind HUDs, the meaning
Yeah.
of the seller doesn't see the buyer doesn't see the seller
Yes.
type thing. So those are the things, those are the questions that I get. Those are my little things that are dumped into the investor friendly bucket. So when they call, they say, "Are
Yep.
you investor friendly?" I do this, and this. And they're like, "Oh, okay. You are investor friendly." That's,
Right.
to the extent that's what it is, and I get it. But I guess for me, every transaction is all the same, but I get it. But those are the investor friendly aspects of it for us, if I'm answering your question correctly.
Yeah, most definitely. So Johnny Stewart actually has a question. He said, "How long does what does the process take?"
I need more. The
So um, I think what he's asking is on a normal transaction where there's really not any issues. We'll call it that, where there's no issues. How long does a process take to run title, get the information back, get it clear to close, things like that?
I got
Yeah.
you. From open, and that's an investor friendly question because I get that a
Yep.
lot. From open to close is a week for us, and I'm being generous there. It
Sure.
normally takes a couple of days. Right now, for us, we're 2 to 3 days with title, especially if you come in saying, "Hey, I want to close this right away." That allows us to prioritize. If we open escrow, we take our 2 days to do our title thing. If you get
Hmm.
us what we need, if it's a double close, we need both contracts. We need to know who our point person is. We need to know how you're going to fund this. Are you self-funding it? Are you getting transactional funding? Are your plans to use C money for A? I'm going to tell you right off the bat, we can't do it. How
Yep.
are you doing it? So the more information you give us when you come in saying, "Hey, I want to rush this closing," the better we can work simultaneously. And what I mean by that is we're going to go into it saying title's going to be clear. We're going to start the
Hmm.
preliminary numbers, which is key, which is important because
Yep.
that bottom line, based on what you've told your seller, they're going to walk with, and based on what your spread really matters, and all these
Yep.
unexpected fees that come along the way. So for us on a deal, no issues, full communication. We know where buyers and sellers are. We know how we're funding. We know everything. From a Monday to a Friday, we can get it done. So by that Friday, you're funded, you're getting your check, and we're talking about the next one.
Yeah, and one thing I gotta say is it's very important as a wholesaler to go over those numbers with the seller before closing. And some people say, well, no, just let them be surprised, let the title company describe it to them, blah, 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 this, that. As a wholesaler, I want to tell you that is not a good idea. Okay. And no offense to people at closing. I love you guys. You guys do a great job, but you're there to get the closing in and out. Here's everything. You're not there to, make things look nice for them. Or anything. It's just the straight numbers. Here you go. And I remember it specifically because I had one seller come through, and all of a sudden I get a call from somebody at Detroit Title. It was one of the process saying, "Hey, the seller walked away, like literally just drove away and didn't sign anything, saying they're not signing nothing." I literally had to get on the phone with them, calm them down, and say, "Hey, listen, this is what they're doing. Listen, you got this much. It's being held in escrow because to make sure that there's no other water bill until this time is done." So on and so forth. So I have to explain that properly. Okay. I go, so then what really are we arguing about? $1,000? I go, are you really gonna break this deal over $1,000 because something that is on your title that there's no control? And I told you that if anything else comes up, it's going to come out of your end. I told you that. Okay. I go, turn around, we'll get this signed, and I'll follow you through this process to make sure you get that water escrow back as long as the bill does comes back as zero.
Yep.
And I'll help you throughout this process. Now, if you are a wholesaler and you say to do that, actually help them through the process by all means, even after you've gotten your
Yep.
money.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you never know who they're going to recommend you to after the fact. So I just gotta say that. So there was one situation specific where I was actually working with you. I had the seller, like, he was on Ford Road, he's like, all right. He turned right back around, and I had to give you guys a call and be like, he's on his way back to come
Right.
sign it.
Right.
Get him ready.
Yeah.
Like,
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad that you said that because we don't know what numbers were discussed. And it
Right.
kind of puts us in the hot seat when they're calling us and they're like, well, that's not what Randy said. And we're like, you need to talk to Randy. But
Yep.
we all have to be on the same accord, because if we're, and pushing back, it leaves the seller to kind of like have that what you had, that
Yeah.
concern or whatnot. So we try to get those numbers to you, as you know, so that you can get in
Yep.
front of it with your seller. And I have my guys all the time like, man, that bottom line didn't come in where I thought. Let's move this around. And that's what I tell them. Let me get you the numbers, because if you got to move some things around,
Yep.
you want to go ahead and do that so that you can be as close as possible to what you presented to your
Yeah.
seller. So
Yeah,
we,
because I've had it. Sorry to interrupt, real quick. Sorry, but I've actually had it where it's like, listen, they weren't expecting this. They need this. They need this bottom line to be this. You know what? Just go ahead and take this out of my assignment fee,
yep,
and let's
yep.
just get this deal done.
Yep,
You
yep.
know?
And that's generally how we do it now. So again, for us, the more we know going into it, the better that we can prepare, and most importantly, get those prelim numbers over, because that's what's going to make
Yeah.
or break the deal, especially on the front end with the seller, because that bottom line is important to them.
Yep. One
And
hundred
your
percent.
spread is important to you too. But
It is.
if you didn't do some of your own due diligence, sometimes that spread, and I've seen it, especially in the beginning, when we first started with the wholesale deals and the assignments, I've seen those
Yep.
7,000 spreads go down to 2,500. And I'm like, oh, hell now, so it's a
Oh
group thing.
yeah,
It's a collaboration.
most definitely. So
There was once a day that I would pray for you. I'd go and misbehave just so you'd notice too. Sneaking looks up and down from across the room.